Hello, and welcome to Simplify Your Retirement Podcast with Stephen Strickland. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, we're excited here to be able to pick up. We're not going to have a long intro here, but, I don't want to get too emotional, but we do need to pick up here, continuing our conversation with Samantha about the Retire Wellthy Framework, WELLTHY framework.
Absolutely.
So the Retire Wellthy Framework. If you didn't catch last episode, go back and watch that before you watch this one. It's really going to help you understand where we're at, but looking forward to continue this conversation. So I believe we left off here after talking about a few of these. Where are we at here, Stephen?
Absolutely. So we've got a few more areas of the Retire Wellthy Framework. Samantha, thanks for staying on with us a little longer so we can do another episode here today too. So if you missed, if you're catching this episode for the first time, make sure you go back and watch the previous one. We introduced Samantha in her coaching program, Lumina Coaching, where she has a Retire Wellthy Framework. 8 areas where people that are in retirement really need to be intentional. People that need to have awareness, make choices that leads to peace of mind. So that's what we talked about. So very important if this is your first time watching, to go back to the previous one and get the first 3 areas of the Retire Wellthy Framework. Today we're going to cover the next 5. So thanks for staying in.
Yeah, wonderful. It's my favorite topic to talk about. So we can keep going.
Absolutely. So, I find it interesting on your website, Lumina Coaching, lumina-coaching.com. Many people leaving their career struggle with translating skills into a new job, aligning with spouse on priorities, making peace with an aging body, designing and implementing a daily structure, identifying beyond a job title and meaningful challenges. So, it just that we didn't touch on this for the last time, but what made you get into this field? And you're a certified coach, but what caused you to choose this area as a focus?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I experienced a big transition in my life, moving from Minnesota back to the Kansas City area about 8.5 years ago, and recognized that transitions are really hard. Like change is disruption. And so when you're disrupting all the different areas of your life, it can feel like you're on rocky ground, sandy ground, whatever, the shifting ground. I guess that's the phrase I'm looking for. And so how to feel good in the process and also set yourself up for better health and wellness in whatever is next is something that I experienced really deeply and had, I would say, a calling to help others with. Now, the retirement specifically came about from conversations with advisors that said, there's a gap here. There's a missing link that people are not getting the support that they need and deserve for this beautiful next season. You are not retiring out to pasture,
Absolutely. It matters. Yeah, exactly. And I remember we had a conversation maybe 6 or 7 years ago over coffee on this. I love the fact that you've just grown and developed this and continue to help people plan for this. And Paul and I and our entire team at Wise Wealth, we focus on the financial wellness aspect. We talked about this last time. That's pretty much where it ends. But you have 7 other areas where we wouldn't be talking to you. We wouldn't be having this conversation several times. So we did not believe that this was actually very important for our clients. We've seen it. We've seen our clients retire, some of them with a passion, with a purpose, with an identity, with a goal, some without. And so we believe it's important to have this peace of mind and enjoyment. You're going to spend 30 or 40 years working in a career and a job, and then you're going to have 30 years after that, hopefully. What's that part of your life going to be?
Yeah. And something you reminded me of is there's this phrase you'll hear in a lot of different circles of be the CEO of your own life, right? And I'm hearing it a lot in the medical world right now, be the CEO of your own health, go in with, equipped to ask your doctor good questions and different things like that. But it really is true here. Be the CEO of your own life and wellness, because we have depended, rightly so, on our workplaces for different structure, for different, connections, for different areas of expansion. And that's all good and appropriate. Now that is going away or that is being disrupted in a really big way. So how are you going to sort of, come from within to say, okay, what do I want to build here? To me, that's so exciting. What do I want to build here?
Right. And like you said, having a daily structure that goes into social wellness. So the first 3 we've already talked about previously was financial wellness, occupational wellness, social wellness, having this structure. And I know when we're talking, between episodes here, you mentioned that what people sometimes need to realize is that this is not a one time for the next 30 years. I've got one big plan. I've got to figure this whole thing out. It's kind of just one thing at a time, or the next step.
Yeah. It's an evolution.
One step at a time.
In some ways, like, take a breath, give yourself permission to not have it all figured out. That sounds very overwhelming. Right. And also give yourself permission to let the gifts and opportunities come to you in their right time. But how do you have a foundation with these dimensions that you've got kind of a core awareness of what works for you, what doesn't, so that you can recognize what you want to say yes to when it comes along, or what you want to say no to.
Right. Yep. Very important. It's good. And so the number four, the next one we'll talk about today is emotional wellness. So in retirement, being emotionally well. So creating, I guess, a balanced day.
Yeah, somewhat. I'm smiling because sometimes people really cringe about emotional wellness.
Right.
I would say I often work with more males and females even. So they're kind of like, do we have to do this chapter?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm going to miss that week.
Right. It is so core to just your daily experience. And our emotional wellness shifts on the daily, on the hourly, so, but the idea is, do I have some core things that are fueling me in a really healthy way from the inside out? Some people have had no emotional training. And that is something that we bring to this chapter of even how do I have a healthy relationship with my emotions? But also when we think about peace, when we think about contentment, that is often coming down to our emotions.
What do you think are some of the, or by experience, or some of the emotional struggles people have post-retirement?
Yeah, a couple of things you've touched on too in the previous example of identity. Was I needed?
Yeah.
Was I helping solve a problem? Was I helping be a part of a bigger picture? That can often help us just feel satisfied emotionally.
Yeah.
It can also be connections. I mean, this one very much is connections. We can all probably think of examples. If you feel disconnected from your spouse or somebody that you love very much, how does that generally feel emotionally, right? You might not be able to focus so much on that work project, or you don't want to go to sleep because your stomach is in knots. So having this ability to navigate the roller coaster of emotions that we are meant to experience, right? This is not about staying at a 10 and, I'm happy all the time.
Yes.
There is an emotional roller coaster of emotions.
And learning how to deal with those feelings. Which again, a lot of times, I think a lot of times even in retirement, because we help people do this, they don't know what they're going to feel.
Yep.
And so I can imagine that for some people, like you said, we talked about before, hey, remember the first 6 months to a year, it's doing all the things on the bucket list. All of a sudden, whoa, I finished all that in 1 year. And now I'm like depressed. I've had nothing to do, no identity. I really don't have any, like you said, off air, going to see your friends from work, maybe the first year or 6 months, but then all of a sudden it's like, don't do that anymore. And, those kinds of things.
Yeah. What you're hitting on is something in the chapter that we have called your wellness toolbox. Okay. So I said in the last episode how actions impact emotions, emotions impact actions. Well, we want to bring awareness to what are the daily wellness tools that are going to help me feel the way I want to feel. So maybe it's getting up at a certain time. Maybe it's making sure you have time for prayer or quiet or just, some meditation. Maybe it's making sure you get outdoors. These are really simple, often free things that we want to make sure this is what builds a daily structure.
Right.
And oftentimes people have really great examples of things that they are just so eager to do because they have been like, I've been working 50, 60 hours a day. I haven't been able to take that hour walk in the morning that I know I love with my dogs. Yeah. Okay, so let's build that in first.
Some structure, some routine.
Yeah, it's routine.
Is good.
It doesn't have to be like super, super strict, but these daily, just these things that you want in your toolbox that help you feel your best. Because when you feel your best, you're going to go outward in these other dimensions in really healthy ways.
Absolutely. Successful people, is there a common denominator? And sometimes it is a routine. Sometimes it is, it's a prayer, it's meditation, it's certain things that seem, it may not be what makes them successful, but somehow it's what all of them do. Yeah. And so I even think of this from a retirement perspective. You want to have a successful retirement, do the things that people that have successfully retired do. And it's not just financial.
Right. Experiment and do what works for you.
Right.
So sometimes people do kind of take on too much at a transition where they're like, okay, now that I have this many hours back in my day, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I should do X, Y, and Z. If people say should, I'm like, hold up. What's pressuring you to think that this is the only right way? Let's slow down a little bit and what works for you.
That's good. Yeah. That's great. And it leads to the next one, which is environmental wellness. And so what do you mean by that? Does that mainly mean, the people you surround yourself with, the place that you live? What is environmental wellness?
So this one is less about the people and more about stimulating, pleasant environments, the spaces we occupy. So, like this office right now is very pleasant to be a part of. We've got natural light coming in, right? I've got a comfy couch, like little things like that, build our day. So you're thinking first of your home, even just your bedroom, your living room, different places. And sometimes people are like, oh, I've got that list, my to-do list. And that can be really good to kind of check off right away in retirement. These things that have been nagging at you.
Yeah. Finish the kitchen, make the bathroom comfortable or whatever.
Take those things to the donation place finally, but it's also the places you frequent in the community. So maybe you have a place that you go to, willingly or because you have to, and it's not very pleasant. Is there anything you can do to help improve it? Can you change it? Can you go somewhere else? Do you like your neighborhood park? Just different things like that of, am I existing in pleasant and stimulating environments?
My environment that's good? I think it's very good. Think about it. You're going to live 25, 30 years in retirement. What's the environment? Who are the people you want to be around? The places, the sights, I guess, the sounds, the smell, all those kinds of things go into that.
And I don't know, do you guys see a lot of people that end up moving around retirement? So this could also be talking to the snowbird people.
Right, exactly.
Or, hey, we want to sell our house, we want to downsize. Okay, now we've got a lot of environment questions to ask.
A lot of that relates around family, I think, depends with their kids. I think most people are not stuck with staying in a certain location. Especially if their kids are gone, you know what I mean? I think it's more about, those relationships is obviously important too. So
absolutely. Yeah. The relationships are going to fuel the environment.
I think that's part of why people like to travel too. Yeah. It's a different environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it creates a different environment for them.
Yeah. And that can be really stimulating.
Yeah.
And then you can enjoy coming back to you're like, oh, this is really familiar. So kind of, again, just bringing that awareness, what works for you, what is pleasant. And I would say uplifting is the word I think of around environment.
I think it's really great to be able to think through all these things, to take them one step at a time. And I know we talked about before, for some people, they may be doing well in 3 or 4 of the areas of wellness, but not the other 4. So look at those. How can you improve? Maybe you can improve one little thing.
Yeah.
One little thing in the environment. It makes a big impact.
So environment, is often overlooked. And so I would like to make sure it gets the same week, like all the other dimensions. Let's not just zoom past it.
That's good.
Have you guys seen you probably have the Wonderful Life movie, right? Like this is like holiday time right now. So we're seeing it a lot, but you know how his banister thing, he runs up the stairs and his little banister comes off. That's like a little environmental nag, right? And it ends up being this blessing that he loves in the end. Right. But there are things like that that can truly free up energy for us for other things when we have our solid environment.
That makes sense. I like that. That's good. And so we're on the final 3. So intellectual wellness. In retirement, making sure intellectually, I guess you're still stimulated. Not growing. You never stop learning.
Right. You don't want to be complacent and stagnant. Now, intellectual wellness, so I think about creativity, think about expansiveness. I actually just had a client who really kind of had a visceral negative reaction to the word intellectual, because there was something in his past where people had told him like, you're not going to be very academic or you're not very intellectual. Okay, well, that's, a tough thing to kind of wear all your life, even though he's had 3 different degrees.
Right,
but,
exactly.
So if that word intellectual, it really is tied to learning. Are we being curious about the world around us? Are we wanting to grow and learn and expand our abilities? People can be creative in all sorts of different ways.
I agree totally. And I know we talked about this last episode about curiosity being the fountain of youth. And to me, people get old And old is not an age. We learned this too. You get old because you're not curious anymore. You're not interested in people. You're not interested in learning. It's okay to find new topics. I think that helps you stay youthful.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about,
interesting, by the way. You want to be interesting. You don't want to be old and just this person's not interesting, so they stop learning.
Right. If you go to the same coffee club every week and you have the same topics, that's going to get old real fast.
Yes.
But it's so we like routine, but routine doesn't need to mean stagnant and complacent, and routine with growing and learning, sprinkled in there. So whether that's books, whether that's podcasts, whether that's, meeting new people, there are all sorts of different ways. And even creatively, the way, that comes about. Sometimes people are like, I've always wanted to take up watercoloring.
Absolutely.
Great. So let's actually make this happen.
Yeah, that you bring that up, Paul. I'm thinking about one of our clients who in retirement started learning Spanish. She's been going to community college, taking Spanish classes in retirement. She may go to Spain, she may go visit these places, but it's more about when she does go there, just to keep growing. Is there something you've always wanted to learn? Something you wanted to do? Do it.
That's a part of the chapter. So there's opportunities to actually list. What are those things that you've said, I've always wanted to, ... Now, maybe we get to them all. We don't need to bite them all off in one bite. But how do we actually put some arms and legs to that plan? So that it's not now you're 90 and you're saying, man, I always wanted to.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know you mentioned last time COVID had a different sort of reaction on certain areas, but I do see one of the positives that came out of COVID was even in this intellectual wellness area where people were forced to learn technology.
Yeah.
Right.
And now we see ways that they embrace that where maybe it's just even FaceTiming grandkids that they never would have done before because they didn't understand the technology, but now they're forced to do it. Like that's another point of here's the value of learning is it can impact all these other areas of life too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even the things that came out, like people had time to like bake bread at home, right? The sourdough starters. I was just listening to something that was like every Friday night in COVID, we made a pie with my sons. And now we don't do it quite the same way, but I'm really good at making pies. And so I deliver them to friends that are sick. And, so looking at different ways to expand, and it can be as simple as learning a new pie or learning how to FaceTime or Zoom.
Right. Absolutely. Keep growing, keep learning. And then there's spiritual wellness. That's one of the 8 core areas that people need to be healthy in retirement. Be well.
So unique, so personal, right? So there's just so many different ways for this to really, be flourishing and to be healthy. But I want to make sure that people just take some time to think about it. Maybe not coast. Maybe this can be tied to that aging question. So there are people that are really thinking about the end of their lives.
End of life.
And that can bring about different feelings. Okay, how am I managing those? Do I want to do something differently so I feel more at peace about aging? So I feel more at peace about what comes next.
Do I have a peace of mind about end of life? And do I have a peace of mind and heart about afterlife?
Absolutely, yeah.
All these things, not just taking that for granted.
Yeah.
Not thinking through those things. So you literally have an entire lesson, an entire week where people are going to be thinking about questions like this.
Yeah. And there are some times where people are like, yep, that one's good. I've got my, understanding or whatever, my personal experience. But maybe a parent just passed. And so this one's really big for them. Just like all of the dimensions, there's an ebb and flow. And so with spiritual, we just want to make space for that as well. And to be really thinking about what's my relationship with my higher power.
Absolutely.
If that's something that they have in their life. Because social wellness, is about the people. But spiritual wellness, it is also about a relationship. And are we putting in the time and the space?
You're reading and praying and reading the Bible, whatever the case may be.
Getting out in
exploring
nature.
These things, especially when you may have more capacity to do it. Do those things.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But I find it interesting because, there's 3 dimensions, I guess, to the human body, to the humanity. And that is body, soul, and spirit. And so, we're looking at the body. That's the next one. Physical wellness. This is more like the soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Making sure is your soul. And then the other one, spirit, is the environment, the occupational, all those other kinds of things we've touched on. So kind of like if you go through this process, you're kind of made whole, you're well in all three areas: body, soul, and spirit, and mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, mind, body, soul, and spirit.
It can be very rare to be able to zoom out like this on your life, right? We can we can read a book and think, I'm going to take that scan, but it's really hard to do by ourselves. We often need a partner, a neutral sounding board,
right?
To be that invitation to say, let's zoom out here. Let's take that bigger view. But then I think what I find so powerful about this approach is now we're going to zoom in to financial, right? We're going to zoom in to spiritual. Right. So we're getting that kind of two-pronged approach that can be really powerful for people and that they haven't done maybe ever in their lives.
That's right.
Yeah.
We always try to focus on having a balanced life. I want to be great, as a parent. I want to be great as a financial advisor. I want to be great as a leader, or whatever the case may be. It's looking at all these areas and say, more than likely, all of us need improvement in all these areas. So it's looking at it and saying, okay, where's the humility? Where in this one area? It's not like, hey, that's what I love about this, because it's developing healthiness, wealthiness in these areas, and all of them are important.
Yeah.
And it's saying, you know what, maybe I'm great in 7 of them, but that one I've never really, so go for it. Be balanced, understand I've got a plan, I've got a purpose, I've got a strategy, I've got intentionality in all these 8 areas. And it might just be one thing I'm going to do in that area. And that's really the kind of the point of this whole thing. It doesn't have to be, I got to do 5 things in 8 areas. It's 40 things.
Absolutely. And the other part of that is that I am not the guru. Like, I am not giving people the plan to say, here's X, Y, and Z to have a great retirement. Now, I think there's some core things that are going to help you have a beautiful retirement. But you are ultimately the decider, because I'm not going to be there to implement it. So I'm not going to be the one that creates it. And that can often be a little bit uncomfortable for people to have so much power, control, decision-making. And that's why slowing it down over the 9 week, we have a wrap-up week. So slowing it down so that it's not overwhelming and that you can kind of feel really empowered. I mean, that's a huge part. Feel empowered to increase your confidence for this next season.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So we have the mind. So we have intellectual wellness. We've got the spirit, emotional wellness. We got the soul, spiritual wellness, but we don't leave out the body. Physical wellness. So, what do people need to be aware of when they get to retirement by saying physically well? Yeah.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I strategically put this one last because oftentimes people want to start there, which is really great. They're thinking, man, I've been working however many hours. I don't have as much time that I would like to work on my physical fitness. And they want to start there with their action plans. And I want to go there too, but not at the forgetfulness of those other 7.
Absolutely.
And so, for physical wellness, it's really that, tripod of nutrition, activity, and sleep. So we don't just need to suddenly say, I'm not working out at all. I'm going to work out 5 days a week. Okay, maybe. But how do we need to kind of titrate, is that the right word? Like scaffold up to that. Also, what's going on with nutrition? What's going on with sleep? Let's just try to think holistically about how do I feel in my current body? This is the body that's going to take me to the next season.
So being, again, to me, like the whole thing about all this is intentionality in every area. So looking at this and not just saying, okay, I need to be active. That's right. We all know this. But what about nutrition? What about what am I eating? How am I sleeping? All those kinds of things.
And this is an area where people will often, I think even they don't do it on purpose. It's kind of unknowingly take on a lot of shoulds. Well, my best friend did this workout program and that worked. Okay, so I should do that. Well, maybe not. I love questioning to really get to what's going to work for you here. Even an analogy is I'm 7 weeks postpartum. So my body is different than it was 2 months ago, 5 months ago, right? It's different than it was 5 years ago. How do I honor and take care of my body now with sleep, nutrition, and activity?
Exactly. It's so important, not to make your decisions based on the experience of someone else. We say this with retirement planning all the time. Just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You got to make the decisions based on your retirement, what's going on in the environment, and the day that you retire, all those kinds of things. So we can definitely relate to that. So
every area is so personal, and that can that can either be overwhelming or it can be an opportunity. And that's what I hope people are hearing from these episodes is it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for wellness.
And I love the fact that this is all intentional too, that you put physical wellness literally last, because most people are like, oh, I need to start this physical regimen. Yes, you do. But there's an order to this whole thing. And I like the order that you put this in. So there's 8 areas here. There's financial wellness, occupational wellness, social wellness, emotional, environmental, intellectual, spiritual, physical. Samantha Tiller has a program, Lumina Coaching, lumina-coaching.com. Retirement Wellthy, 𝒊𝒐𝒏𝒂𝒍. These 8 areas of framework. You have a 9-week group coaching session. So people need to know this is not live. It's not,
So you can be anywhere in the country and be a part of a group coaching for Retire Wellthy. It's all virtual. And what we do is we go through these different dimensions. There's a personal workbook that you have that awareness to say what's working for me, what's not. And then we jump on every other week with a virtual group coaching session to really tease out what's going on. And I developed this because I could tell people craved community in this retirement transition. I had several people say things like, am I the only one that's struggling with this? Absolutely not. You are not the only one. And so even having that sense of community to hear ideas from each other has been really powerful and cool to encourage each other in the next season. And that could be you're right at the doorstep. You're 2 to 4 to 5 months away from retirement, or you're 3+ years, but wanting to think about these pieces. I've also had people go through solo. I've had people go through with their spouses and say that was really powerful that we got to, bring to light these different questions in a really neutral and supportive way.
I love it. You know what I mean? So there's kind of like no excuse. We recommend that you do it, and so I really appreciate, Samantha, what you do. We're gonna stop this right here because I could go to episode 3, Paul. I could do this. I can keep going and talking to you.
Yeah, we didn't even get to a lot of examples.
We didn't get
to
some examples here, and I know we could. I know there's a lot more for you to say, for me to say about these things. We highly recommend it. So look up Samantha, look up the website. You can do it virtually. There's going to be group sessions. Normally you have a new one starting every quarter. So people go to the website
for 2025. I'm not sure when this will come out, but January cohort. And if not, look for one that would start probably March or April.
It's virtual. You can be home. You can be on vacation. You can be somewhere. Join it once a week. Get the workbook. They can work through for a week. So it's every other week.
Every other week for the group sessions for us to talk about it, but every week for the chapters that they would be going through.
Awesome. Great.
And I will say, you could go through it solo. There's still the same framework if that would be interesting for someone. And I do solo coaching as well.
Someone who is getting ready to retire or right at retirement, what's one thing you want them to think about right now?
Look at the whole bridge. So it's not just about what you're leaving, but what you're moving towards. And when we can start to look at that gap and that bridge in between, it's going to be a really great experience.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Samantha.
And appreciate you being here, and love how what you do aligns so well with what we do. And so, even here at Wise Wealth, our mission is to guide families on a path to make work optional so that they're free to give, serve, and enjoy life like never before. And so the plan that we put together, the financial plan that brings peace, is one that puts people on that path to make work optional. That's the first step. And we're very intentional about it. We don't want to be reactionary. We want to be intentional. And then we talk about being free to give, serve, and enjoy life. But a lot of times people don't necessarily fully know what that means. And I love how this fits in with that, because this framework brings intentionality to that part, to the giving, serving, and enjoying life. And so if you're looking for how to make work optional, get a hold of us here at Wise Wealth, 816-246-9473. Email us at info@wisewealth.com. We'd love to help you start on that path of making work optional and bringing you peace that comes from having a financial plan. And then as you look at giving, serving, and enjoying life and making that intentional, reach out to Samantha. She's there to help you, whether it's a group session, it's one-on-one, whatever it is, there's ways to be able to do that, but be intentional about it. Let's be intentional about our future, not just where we've come from, but where we're going. So again, thank you, Stephen, for your time. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us again
pleasure.
here, and look forward to the next time
Wonderful.
you're back in the studio here as well. And so, but again, our last thank you goes to you, our listening and viewing audience. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we do this. If you haven't yet, click subscribe so that you'll be updated and notified when new content comes out. I would love to be able to share all this information with you. Have a few more exciting episodes ahead in this season of non-traditional financial topics. So, but again, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for watching. This is Paul from Wise Wealth reminding you that financial peace comes from having a plan. And we'll see you next time.